In the time it takes you to actually board that flight from Group 8,
Now boarding Premier Altitude Elite Club members.
you could have bought a Hyundai on Amazon. Yes, that Amazon, where you buy everything else.
Mid-tier Altitude Elite, feel free to board now.
So while you're waiting for them to make up new boarding groups, you can order your dream car and the dealer will have it ready in no time.
Now boarding groups 1 through 7.
So close. Visit HyundaiUSA.com or call 562-314-4603 for more details. Limited availability, pickup through participating Hyundai dealer in select markets.
How has everyone been doing? Because I have been going through it. And my friends that are into astrology say there's a lot going on in the cosmos. So much so that I'm doing my first solo episode since episode 1 of this podcast. And the reason is I've been getting a lot of questions on Instagram. September was the most challenging month of my responsible adult chapter of my life. It tested every ounce of my resilience, every spiritual tool I've ever preached about. It was the kind of month that makes you question if the universe has a personal vendetta against you. Everything from grief and fear and raw survival instincts, all at the same time. When I say responsible adult chapter of my life, I'm talking about the version of me that finally got her shit together around 27. Actually making choices that future me wouldn't want to slap past me for. I used to think that if I leveled up my personal growth game or raised my vibration high enough, that I would somehow not call in traumatic experiences. Cute, huh? Well, in a way, that was true. When I stopped being a low-level klepto, stealing lip glosses from Walmart, I stopped getting my phone stolen all the time. Was it a new frequency? Apple's new tracking technology? Karma taking a break? Who knows? The rabbit hole goes deep. But one thing's for sure, our actions and energy do shape our experiences. I 100% believe that. But here is what I've discovered. In most cases, it's not about rising above or avoiding certain experiences, but instead, radically changing how you experience them. So instead of spiraling in the storm, you are more likely to dance in the rain. And this has been something I've experienced in the last 10 years or so. My relationship to hardship changed. I usually don't, or at least try not to, create meaning around things like I would have in the past. And if I start to, I notice and I revert. For instance, instead of seeing a setback as a sign that I'm unlucky or unworthy, I now try to view it as just a thing that happened. It's all just happening. And when I started to understand that, I began to realize how much the meaning I gave something just dragged on the experience or the mood, and it just made it even worse than it would have been otherwise. And this shift really has been life-changing. And it's part of why the last decade of my life just has kept getting better than the last. It's not that things were always smooth sailing, but it's because I've changed how I navigate the rough waters. I've always said that the way you experience yourself determines the way you experience the world. So when you're hard on yourself, you perceive the world to be hard on you. Every criticism feels amplified. But when you approach yourself with love, the world appears to be more loving. You start noticing kindness everywhere. It's all a mirror, reflecting our inner world back to us. So I know all this. And September rocked my world. It tested all of my tools. Frankly, the last 10 years, it's been fairly easy to not create meaning around experiences, to notice when I am, and at least not dwell in them longer than a couple of hours. But man, wasn't it fun to experience a time in my life when that was really difficult to do. So in this episode, I'm about to share the story of my month filled with loss, terrifying medical chaos, natural disasters, and the business decision that forced me to navigate it all while literally evacuating my family to safety. I'm also going to share how I'm dealing with it all because I am still currently in it, what I have learned and am still learning, how I'm processing, what I'm leaning into and out of, and my personal healing tools. Let me ask you something. How much time did you spend last week thinking about what to eat? Planning meals, making grocery lists, wandering around the store like a lost tourist. I used to waste entire Sunday afternoons on this, and it was exhausting. Then I found Hungry Root. Hungry Root fills your cart with personalized picks and plans your week of meals, getting smarter with every order. They have over 15,000 recipes to choose from each week, and most are ready in 15 minutes or less. I'm actually headed to Michigan this week, and I had my Hungry Root order delivered there. So I already know that I have meals ready and plenty of snacks for the kids without scrambling to find a grocery store. It's just handled. And what I love most is their smart cart technology. It learns what I actually like and then recommends groceries, recipes, and supplements just for me. So no more buying spinach that rots in my fridge. They screen out over 200 additives and only source high quality ingredients. The time I've gotten back has just been life-changing. So take advantage of this exclusive offer. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/mindlove and use code MINDLOVE. That's hungryroot.com/mindlove, code MINDLOVE, to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/mindlove, code MINDLOVE. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. You guys, workplace stress is killing us. 61% of people are dealing with stress levels that are way beyond normal. So if you're feeling it, you are not alone. I used to think I could just push through everything, work harder, sleep less, pretend I had it all figured out. But that approach nearly broke me. I am all about following your joy. If that voice in your head is telling you to make a change, listen to it. Maybe you are ready to quit your job. Maybe you do need to flip your whole life upside down. But either way, you need support and tools to navigate it well. And that's where therapy comes in. Modern therapy teaches you how to set boundaries without feeling guilty, how to manage anxiety before it spirals, how to make big moves from a place of strength instead of desperation. And BetterHelp has over 30,000 therapists and has helped 5 million people worldwide. And you can talk to someone from your couch. No waiting rooms, no awkward scheduling. Therapy gives you the clarity on whether that voice telling you to make a change is your intuition or just the Sunday scaries. But either way, you deserve support. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Unwind from work with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/mindlove. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/mindlove.
Turn up your frequency with Mind Love. Bite-sized brain hacks for seekers, dreamers, and doers. It's time to give your mind a little love with your host, Melissa Monti.
So, what's been going on? What made September so challenging? Well, first, I want to rewind to June because that's when the first domino fell. I had a miscarriage. And I know this is so common, but I think my experience with fertility so far has made me a little bit cocky in a way. Can you be fertility cocky? I don't know, but I think I was pretty close to it. Every time my husband and I tried to have a baby, we got pregnant on the first try. And other than some crazy nausea, which I actually found a fix for, DM me on Instagram if you want to know about that, I had healthy pregnancies and beautiful, healthy babies. And ironically, both my past babies had the same due date, 2/22. Well, when I got pregnant this time, guess what my due date was going to be? 2/22. And this entire pregnancy felt like divine intervention. We weren't sure if we were going to have another baby so quickly. Actually, we weren't even sure we were going to have another baby. But then I just started to get this pull that we were meant to have another family member. And one day, I kind of jumped my husband. I was like, let's just do this. I think I'm ovulating. And he was like, are you sure we have our hands full? And I was like, come on. Like, totally unlike me. Pressured him into it. And he was like, yeah, let's do this. And it was this kind of spiritual conception moment. We both had this energetic feeling, this vibration. And we even said that something about it felt magical. And sure enough, I got pregnant. And my due date was 2/22, not something that I had planned. So everything just felt like it was aligned, like I was supposed to do this, like something came over me. And so when I miscarried at 7 weeks, it shook me. I was just not expecting it. But even the miscarriage was a spiritual experience. At first, I just started bleeding. And so I went to the ER because I had a feeling something was off. And they told me that they couldn't find a heartbeat, but that was normal at this time, that it might just be too early, and to come home and come back in a couple of days. And if my HCG levels rose, then it was probably a good sign. Maybe they could find a heartbeat then. Well, I went home and I went into a pretty deep meditation. And in this meditation, I had this visualization of meeting the soul. But the soul wasn't a baby or the outline of a person. It was actually more of a light formation. And we were communicating telepathically. So we sort of met each other, and I was receiving information. And this soul didn't have an age. It wasn't young or old. It was just like the entirety of a being. Well, the message I received was that she came to me for a reason, that we both needed this somehow. There was an integration in it, and she'd be back. And then the light formation just flew away. And I just started sobbing hard, like a deep grief. And my husband came in and he was like, "We don't know for sure. Keep the hope. Let's hold on." And I just knew. Mother's intuition, maybe it was the message from that spiritual experience, but I just knew. And sure enough, 2 days later, when I went back to the ER, it was confirmed. Well, because of this meeting of the soul, the whole thing was fairly easy for me to accept. And I was great at not creating any meaning around this or my body or aging or whatever it is, despite the ER doctor just continuously telling me, this is more common with age. Well, I didn't want to bring that into my awareness. So I really did the work around it, and I allowed myself to feel and to grieve. And it was about 2 weeks of deep grief, but I could feel myself moving through it and not holding on to it in my body. And 2 weeks later, we got pregnant again. So it felt like a promise kept, really, that the soul told me she would be back, and she was. And so everything about this pregnancy was going well. At 6.5 weeks, I developed pretty severe nausea like I had with my past pregnancies. And I felt less inclined to tell everyone. If you followed my pregnancies back in 2021 and 2023, you would know that I actually told people very early. I was very public about it. And I shared that I don't really understand how so many people can go through the hardships of the first trimester alone. And people would say, well, if you miscarry, it's really difficult to have to share with everyone. But I thought, well, then you have to miscarry alone. And how unnatural does that feel? You create life. You're going through nausea and exhaustion, and you're just keeping it all in, afraid to tell people and afraid to tell people about your miscarriage. And I still so wholeheartedly believe that. And also, I feel that difference. I feel the fear of having to tell people and the societal construct that my body is failing in a way, or that I am inviting in pity. I don't really like that. And so this was another reason that miscarriage almost felt like a blessing. I always feel grateful for when the universe kind of pops me back into place. I said the same thing when I was expecting to have a birthing center birth with my first and had to get transferred to the hospital. Me pre-hospital visit was very much like, no, never get the epidural. There's so many dangers to all this. Cut to me, hour 48 into my labor, begging for an epidural and being grateful. And yes, I still loved my home birth much more than my hospital birth, but I am grateful to understand both sides, because being in a position that I am where I'm speaking to so many people, I really don't like having judgment. And when I notice that I have judgment, I will go into the depths of that judgment to really feel the other side, the other perspective, so that I can present information with a more unbiased view. And so part of me thought that this first miscarriage was giving me that. And so I wasn't secretive about my second pregnancy, but you might notice I didn't mention it on the podcast. At least I don't think I did. Sometimes things slip out because I kind of just get into real raw mode and it's hard to hold things back. It's just not really me. So my pregnancy is progressing, and the first few weeks, I always had a little disclaimer. Yeah, if this one sticks. And then I felt confident. I was in my third month. I was feeling all of the pregnancy symptoms. I had a bump that looked about the size of 20 months because it was my third pregnancy, and my body just sort of started doing what it knows how to do. Around week 7, really, I started to get bloated and that belly bump. And so I'm just doing all the pregnancy things, leaning into the vitamins and the nutrition. I just did a maternity clothes haul because my clothes didn't fit anymore and I wasn't loving my past maternity clothes. And I was getting ready to host a retreat. And no one at the retreat knew I was pregnant yet, so I wanted to have all my cute maternity clothes. Well, then we're at the beginning of September, and something else from our past sort of came back to haunt us. Let me explain. My husband experiences what are called cluster headaches, and headaches is not really the right word for them. They're actually referred to as Horton syndrome and informally as suicide headaches. My husband doesn't even like to tell people about them because everyone's like, oh yeah, headaches are the worst, or oh yeah, I get migraines. And I fully acknowledge that migraines can be debilitating, but cluster headaches are recognized as one of the most excruciating pains known to medicine. They're centered on one eye, and the agony that they cause is actually compared to having a red hot ice pick driven through your eye and into your brain. And sufferers are known to revert to suicide to escape the pain. So, as maybe you can understand, the term headache really misrepresents the extreme severity of the condition. Attacks usually last an hour to 2, but they can range from 15 minutes to 4 hours. The reason that they're called clusters is that for most people, they come in a cluster of days. So for my husband, since he was 18 years old, every about 13 to 16 months they'll come on, and they'll last for about 2 weeks. And they're just really strange. They only come during spring and fall. They know there's some sort of link to circadian rhythm. There is a big link in people that have had head trauma, and my husband has definitely had sports head injuries and had concussions. Well, for him, when these come around, right when they start, they're once a day and almost at the exact same time. So the first 4 days of this series were at 6:57 a.m. And then after about day 4, they start coming multiple times a day. They can even come as often as 8 to 10 times a day. So patients are often woken up several times during the night by attacks, and some people go to extremes, including banging their heads against the wall or punching their head to try to distract themselves from the pain or even knock themselves out. It's so awful. The first time I ever witnessed my husband going through one of these, it was one of the most traumatic things I've ever experienced. And still to this day, afterward, I almost feel like I have a mild PTSD. I can actually feel my eyes welling up right now, just thinking about them. I remember when Brave was 4 months old, getting a text message from my husband in the middle of the night saying, please come down here. I can't do this alone. And it is just so difficult watching somebody that you love screaming in pain, clawing at their face or at the floor, just feeling like they're being tortured. He says he feels like he's in medieval times. Well, after the last series, I started to do a lot of research, and we found some different things that worked, like a medication called sumatriptan. It's a nasal spray or an injection that works. The tablets take too long for him. But the first time he used the nasal spray, it went away almost immediately. And he was like, this is a miracle. Well, then we realized that this medication is a catch-22. They make them come more frequently. So it's almost like it interrupts an attack that will inevitably come. So it might stop it for the moment, but it will come out later. And so we've noticed since he's using sumatriptan, it would come up to 8 times a day. So it reminds me of the movie Saw, where no matter what you choose, it's horrible. Either go through this potentially level 10 pain that is what he considers the worst pain in the world. People that have been shot or have given birth say that cluster headaches are much, much worse. So he has this thing that can get rid of it, but then it's going to come more often. So it's really been a mind warp. Well, the other thing we tried since the last series was microdosing psilocybin. So it's something that he's been doing weekly with mushroom chocolates. And they didn't come back. And we were thinking that maybe this was the thing that was going to keep them away forever. And so when he started to get headaches that felt like a cluster, and at first it started mildly, it was really emotional because he thought, well, is this happening? Is it going to be different because of the mushrooms? Maybe it's not that. And then he got his first full-blown cluster. And like I said, it was very emotional because it was realizing that this thing that we thought might have been a miracle didn't keep it away forever. Yes, we were grateful that the psilocybin kept it from coming back for 3.5 years, but here they were again.
Shopify's point of sale system helps you sell at every stage of your business. Need a fast and secure way to take payments in person? We've got you covered. How about card readers you can rely on anywhere you sell?
Thanks. Have a good one.
Yep, that too. Want one place to manage all your online and in-person sales? That's kind of our thing. Wherever you sell, businesses that grow with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 a month trial at shopify.com/listen. Shopify.com/listen.
And so we still had a lot of questions. Was this series going to be the same, given that he was still on psilocybin? Was it going to be different? And so we were really holding out hope for the first few days until it started to get more extreme. And so when these are happening, it is difficult on the family. Thank God our office has its kind of own separate entrance. There's 2 doors between it, so you can kind of hide the kids from it. But there were quite a few times that the kids were really worried about Daddy yelling in the other room, Daddy being in so much pain. It was really hard, especially the ones that were happening in the middle of the night, which were all of the first ones. So he was barely sleeping. And then we find out that our town, Big Bear, is on fire. Arson. Thank you, sir. Some random guy decided that this was how he was going to get his rocks off, and he started a huge fire that is actually still going to this day. It's been, I think, 30 days now, maybe more. Well, the fire was getting bigger and bigger, spreading and spreading, and the air quality was getting horrible. But we were hoping for the best. This is not the first or the last time that there's been a dangerous fire up here. Actually, the last one that was pretty bad was when I was pregnant with Brave, my first, and we had to evacuate for several weeks because the air quality was really bad. That one was from a gender reveal. People these days, right? Well, anyways, we had a big camping trip planned with a bunch of other parents of toddlers, and we decided to go on that, even though my husband was having clusters and even though the air quality wasn't amazing, but it wasn't horrible. Well, as we're on this camping trip, the clusters are getting worse, the air quality is getting worse, and my husband had to go home both nights. So I was basically camping alone with a 1 and a 3-year-old. Some beautiful, amazing memories, and also wouldn't really recommend it. And so on the last day, I actually had to pack up all of our stuff by myself because my husband was in so much pain, and he somehow drove to our campsite. We were camping down the street from our house, not far, and he just could barely move. Mind you, when he has these cluster attacks, his whole right side of his face will be swollen, his eye will be watering, so there's something physical happening in there also. If you or someone you know experiences cluster headaches, please reach out to me on Instagram. I have been gathering info like a madwoman here, and so I would love to connect. But anyways, I had to pack up the entire campsite, and the whole time I'm thinking, I'm lifting a lot of things. Man, this is so different than what my first pregnancy would have been like, where I was so cautious of not lifting anything over 20 pounds and, resting my body. And now I'm lifting everything and just really doing some tedious physical exertion here. But I did what I had to do. I felt like I was in mama bear mode, and we went home. The fire is getting much worse over the next couple of days. And my husband says to me, I hate to have to tell you this, but I think you're going to have to cancel your retreat. And my heart drops. I had been planning this retreat in the mountains for 6 months now. And now people are coming from all over the country. One woman's coming from Norway, and I'm supposed to let everyone down. And so I am in panic for about 60 seconds. And then immediately I say, nope, I'm going to move this. And so I get to work on moving a retreat that's happening in 1 week to another area. So I'm looking everywhere from Los Angeles to Palm Springs. Well, God bless my ADD, because I got that shit moved in 5 hours for the most part. There were still some final activities to plan, but I got the shell of it moved over and was pretty damn proud of myself, honestly. Well, the very next day, I was supposed to go down to find out the gender of my baby. And it's something that I really want to do. This was the first pregnancy that I didn't do the sneak peek to find out at like 9 weeks what the gender is. My OBGYN is all the way in Santa Monica. I just prefer the quality of care that I get over there. And I usually see an OBGYN for the first few months through the 20th week so that I can get the tests covered by insurance that I want to have. And then I switch over to my midwife full time. Well, this whole time I'm thinking I have to cancel this appointment. There's no way I should even be doing this. We were already under evacuation warning. And if it went up one level, which it could in any minute, depending on the direction of the wind, then they might not even let me back home. And so I had planned to cancel, but it was the oddest thing. I just found myself going through the motions of going to this appointment, which were not easy motions. I had to wake up at 3 a.m. to leave so I could get to LA before crazy traffic started, and then hang out for a couple hours until my appointment at 9 a.m. And so I did that. And I thought to myself that this is quite foolish, but I did it anyways. And I ended up being able to go to my favorite yoga class in Santa Monica and go to my favorite breakfast spot. And I actually texted my husband, I think things are getting better for us. I feel amazing today. I got to do all this. I just feel really good. And then I went to my appointment and saw a friend in the waiting room who was pregnant and about to give birth, and we celebrated our joy together for a moment. And then I went into the ultrasound room, and she brings up my baby, and I see it on the screen looking beautiful, like it's the right size. And then she just says to me, yeah, I see the fetus here, but I don't see a heartbeat. And I said, wait, what? And she says, yeah, I should see blinking right here, and we're not seeing anything. I'm really sorry. And I'm in shock, basically. I remember even thinking to myself in my last miscarriage, I can't believe some people experience this at 10, 12 weeks, even later. That would be devastating. And here I was in that exact position. And so she leaves me, and you know how doctors can be sometimes, quite emotionally detached, or at least I think it just feels that way regardless, because I was so emotional. But I'm in this office by myself. My town's on fire. My husband's suffering medical emergencies, and I am about to have a panic attack. Right then, my husband texts me, how's baby? And I'm just waiting for the actual OBGYN to come in, and I don't know what to tell him, so I'm not texting him back. And then I decide to try to call him because I had been waiting quite a while. And when he answers the phone, he is obviously in extreme pain. He answers the FaceTime, and all I see is the floor, and I can hear him deep breathing and moaning, and he's like, what's up? And I'm like, nothing. And I'm clearly crying. And he's like, just tell me. And I was like, I'm not going to tell you right now. And I end up hanging up the phone. And then he texts me and he's like, just tell me. So he's in the middle of a horrible cluster attack. And I have to tell him that our baby has no heartbeat. So now we're both hurting in more than one way. And so I'm talking to the doctor about my options. And she tells me, you can let it pass naturally or you can get a DNC. And I'm sitting here thinking, I am hosting a retreat in 1 week. I don't even know if I can get back to my town right now because the fires are so bad. How am I going to do all this? And I'm thinking to myself, if I pass this naturally, I could potentially be in a state where it feels as though I'm giving birth while I'm hosting a retreat. Or I can get the DNC. But she tells me that the only day that they can fit me in is the very next morning, and I have to be back in Santa Monica at 5 a.m. And so I begin driving back up to Big Bear, absolutely devastated. I keep trying to call my husband, who keeps having cluster attacks, and I get up and my whole town is bright orange. I get into my house and realize just how bad the air quality is. Like my family had been frogs in boiling water, just not realizing how much worse the air quality's been. So I hear my baby Maven coughing and I think, we need to get them out of here now. So I call my mom, who lives 5 hours away in Arizona, and she agrees to come pick them up. She doesn't get in till about 11 p.m. And I need to figure out how I'm getting to surgery. I can't rely on my husband because he's having a lot of cluster attacks at this point. And so I start reaching out to my friends in LA, and thank goodness I have an angel of a human who at this point was, I'd consider a good acquaintance, but we had never even really hung out on our own. And she let me stay in her home. And so I didn't want to get there too late. I had to pack up my kids. My husband had to complete the packing up period while he's having yet another cluster. My poor little 3-year-old is trying to help him. When my 3-year-old is in pain, I do mama magic, as we call it. So I do this little thing and make some sounds, and it works for him. And so he kept saying, Daddy, I can do bravery magic and I can get you something cold for your head. And just thinking about his worry kind of breaks my heart a little bit, but also makes me so proud of him. And so I go down and I have to be up at 5 a.m. I have to take an Uber to my DNC, and my friend's mom, who I had never met, has to pick me up from a DNC. And again, another blessing in disguise. This mom is one of the kindest humans I've ever met. I ended up staying with this family for 5 days while my kids were in Arizona. And I don't know if you've ever lost a pregnancy, but it just made me want to be with my kids. But at the same time, I was so grateful for the space. And honestly, this sounds selfish, but I even had to tell my husband, a part of me is glad I can't witness your clusters right now because I just felt too broken to handle them, to be the strong one. It was so tough. So he was in a hotel because he couldn't drive far. And he was still going through his cluster attacks, and they started to get a little bit better, but not quite. Well, after 5 days, we finally both went back to Big Bear, and the air was still bad, but we sealed up our house and we put our air filters running, and we got the AQI inside our homes to be pretty good. And we stayed there for 2 nights. Night 1, he had a mini cluster. He had to get up in the middle of the night like he had been doing, but he was putting his feet in hot water. And let me clarify, when I say mini cluster, it's probably still worse than the worst headache most people have experienced, but he's not clawing at his face. It's not an unbearable pain, but it's still a can't do anything else type of pain. So he put his feet in hot water. He was able to come back to bed after 2 hours, but he was breathing really heavily when he got back into bed. And then we're at the next night. So as a timeline for you, this is 2 nights before my retreat is supposed to start. And my husband is supposed to be the shuttle driver that goes all the way to LAX to pick up the women and bring them 2.5 hours to the destination, which is now in Palm Springs. So I wake up at about 1 a.m. and I just hear him moaning in excruciating pain in the bathroom. So I get up to help him, immediately grateful that I can be there for him in this moment. Isn't it funny how we think we cannot handle things until we're faced with the crisis and we just get our shit together? We step into our warrior. And when he's going through these, it's a really hard process on the body. So he'll start shivering a lot. So I'm bringing him ice packs and then a blanket and then a water and some food since he's taken so much medication at that point. It's horrible. Like, I would honestly give birth every day for this period of weeks, then choose to watch him go through this. That's just how hard it is on both of us. And that's what I'm going through. So I can only imagine what he's going through. He ends up being up until 6 a.m. It's the worst cluster of the series. Just absolutely awful. I cannot stress how horrible this is. So the next morning, I'm like, we need to call an audible. You cannot be the shuttle driver for this retreat. I think I might have to do this. So we needed to play things by ear. And the next night, we were going down to Palm Springs to stay in a timeshare to be in the area that the retreat's starting. Well, thank goodness the next night he slept through the night for the first time in weeks, and he ends up being the shuttle driver. But I am on standby because there's a chance he could have a cluster on the drive and I'd have to go drive to meet him, take the shuttle, leave him in a different vehicle to have a cluster alone. Like, I was really on edge, you guys. This all seemed so crazy. And everyone just kept saying, how did you not cancel this retreat? And part of me, I don't know if that was a dumb decision or an honorable one, but I, in my mind, could not let these women down. And I felt like I would feel more guilt and it would only add to what I was going through if I had to cancel it. And thankfully, things do start getting better from here. Shane made it back from the retreat. During the retreat, he was still in the timeshare and he had a couple of mini clusters, not horrible, but still disrupting his sleep. He hasn't had a full-blown one since. Thank God. And I'm hosting a retreat in Palm Springs. Kind of nervous about the weather. It could end up being 105 degrees, but somehow the weather was perfect the entire time. The wind even picked up and we had a mini overcast day that made the temperature go down. And then I was worried, is it going to be too windy to do the cacao ceremony on the last night outside? And then the wind just died down. Everything went absolutely perfect. And the retreat was magical. The bonds that we formed together, all of us women, and just the healing where you're able to give one another. I'm so glad I listened to my intuition and went through with it. It's actually one of my favorite things I've done so far in my career. Cannot wait to host more. And I'm also thinking of different ways, whether I do solo retreats or very small group retreats, but the transformation with everyone, including myself, was just so powerful. Well, I shared a little bit on Instagram about what I was going through around this retreat. So I'd love to read you what I wrote. I said, this week I hosted a retreat amidst one of the most challenging weeks of my life. And I worried that if I shared too much with those attending, that they would think I was too broken to be hosting and worry about their investment. So I debated not sharing or waiting until the last day. But once I arrived, I heard the women talking about how my vulnerability drew them to me. And so I knew what I had to do. And as I shared, I could feel my own armor come off. I could feel myself be authentically me. I could also feel that in that 2 hours before I shared that I was holding things in that I couldn't let go really. And so the moment that I did began a week of healing. I realized that we all needed each other. And I share that because often we think we need to brave it all alone. We don't see the support right in front of us. We worry about burdening others, but we deprive them of the gift that comes with connecting and giving. It's like we're all carrying around these invisible life preservers, desperate to stay afloat while surrounded by an ocean of helping hands. When we open up, magic happens. walls crumble, bridges form, and suddenly that mountain you've been trying to scale solo becomes a group hike with snacks and encouragement. And let's be real, everything is better with snacks. Something in me changed at this retreat. Next time I'm tempted to soldier on alone, I'll remember this moment. Letting your guard down opens the floodgates of healing, not just for you, but for everyone lucky enough to witness your courage. The power of vulnerability isn't just in sharing, it's in the ripple effect it creates. And when we open up, we give others permission to do the same. It's like taking a deep breath in a room where everyone's been holding theirs. Suddenly the air shifts, tension eases, real conversations begin. But it's not always easy. Our minds whisper, "You're too much. They won't understand. Stay quiet. Stay safe." But here's the truth. Your struggles don't diminish your light. They make it more visible to those who need it most. So next time you're tempted to hide, remember, your story matters. Your honesty heals. Your courage is contagious. By showing up as you are, you create space for others to do the same. And in that space, that's where the real magic happens. So here's my story. I keep telling myself, here is what it looks like to be in the mess when you know how to clean it up. And the truth is, I don't know how to clean it up. I don't know every single step, but I have the tools to be in the mess. I have the tools to trust the process. I felt grateful a couple years ago when my dog died, and I was extremely close to this dog, and it was my first opportunity in true adulthood, like I call it, with the tools that I have to be able to experience something so hard. And here it is again, on another level, on multiple levels. It's like a multi-tiered approach of being able to just handle the shit that life throws at you. People kept asking me what I'm doing to care for myself during the process. And honestly, things were so crazy for a while. I kept sharing that I am giving myself grace through the process. And right now, that's all I really can do because it's all I have space to do. I felt as though I had to hold it together in a way to care for my family and make sure my children were safe and host this retreat. Although, if you do get into a group of compassionate spiritual women, you may not need to hold it together as much as you think, but I was still in planning mode, making sure that everything ran smoothly. So what I had planned to do was really focus on somatic work when I got done with the retreat. So a lot of embodied work and allowing my grief to move through me, really feel it, listen to what it has to teach me. And the first couple days I was home, it was not exactly as I had hoped. Straight back into mom mode. My husband was still having cluster scares. And so we were really making sure he got the right amount of sleep because it is circadian rhythm linked somehow. And so coming home and having my kids all of a sudden waking up 5 times in a night because of the transition, I was on duty, already sleep deprived. Lucky me. Thankfully, a few days in, it calmed down, and I have been focusing on that. So some things I've tried. I joined a support group. First, I tried one for people with multiple miscarriages since I had 2. And what I found was, for me personally, it did not feel helpful. In that group, it was a lot of people who had lost hope, and I wasn't ready to be in that energy. So I asked to switch to their other group of people that have just dealt with losses. And after going to 2 sessions, I just realized I personally need to be very discerning about which support groups that I receive support from. If I were to join a support group or create one, it's an idea that I've had, I want it to have a spiritual focus, a very hope-based focus. And what one of my friends told me was that hurt people, and that even applies to this situation. So most people were there because they were hurting, not because they were hopeful. And while there's a place for that, it wasn't what I was personally seeking. So I decided I was better off doing my own healing work or working with a somatic practitioner or a spiritual guide in some way. A book that has been really helpful for me is a book by Walter Macachin called Spirit Babies: How to Communicate with the Baby You're Meant to Have. And this has been healing on so many levels. It has even allowed me to process past abortions that I have actually felt very guilty for since having my own children and just relating to that embryo in a different way. Well, the author, who is no longer living, was a medium who was able to communicate with spirit babies, and he made that his life's work. So it helped a lot of people through their fertility journeys and processing abortions, miscarriages, and difficulty conceiving. Well, the way he visualized babies was as a light formation. So this actually felt very healing for me when I was connecting it with my experience with my first miscarriage in June. The light formation that I couldn't quite describe to people. Another concept that the book talks about is how our conscious choice can affect outcomes. And so here's another part of this experience that just came together for me yesterday, actually. Yesterday, I received my tissue analysis back from the sample sent in after my DNC, and they found that this past miscarriage had an extra chromosome, which is the leading cause of miscarriages. Not always your body not doing what it's supposed to be doing. Well, the extra chromosome was trisomy 21, meaning if the baby had made it to full term, this baby would have had Down syndrome. And here is another part to the story that this allowed me to put together. Just a couple days before I miscarried, I started to think a lot about Down syndrome, which was odd. It hadn't happened in any previous pregnancy. I have a friend from college who had a Down syndrome child, and she's now dedicated her life to helping families with Down syndrome. And online, it seems as though this is one of the greatest gifts she's ever been given. She looks genuinely happy. And that popped into my mind. And I said to my husband, isn't it interesting how people who have Down syndrome children express that it's one of the greatest gifts of their lives, and how there are struggles, but the gifts outweigh them. And my husband was like, why are you saying this? And I said, I don't know. I've just been thinking about it. But we ended up having a talk and really talking about our future plans for our lives. And we came to the conclusion that although it does seem to be a gift, and it could even be a life path I could handle, was it in the blueprint of the greatest gifts we could give to the world? And so we talked about it, and without really knowing what we were doing, made a decision together that while it might be a gift, it wasn't one that we were choosing to take on in that moment. And it was just a casual conversation, but I think it was 2 days later that I miscarried, and the ultrasound technician told me that it just happened in the last day or so. Another interesting part of this experience is that I have been dead set on having a girl. During both pregnancies, I was saying, nope, I'm not even bringing a boy into my awareness. I'm calling her a girl until I know otherwise. And in Spirit Babies, they actually talk about a couple who did this and how the Spirit Baby was like, no, I'm meant to be a boy, which was why the conception wasn't happening. And so what's interesting to me is that right after I miscarried, I had this overwhelming awareness that I do not care if I have another boy or a girl. I feel like there's another family member meant to come. It would be a beautiful gift for me to be able to experience what it's also like to mother a little girl. But if I'm meant to mother 3 boys, so be it. I would be just as grateful. And if I had delivered either of those past babies to term, there's a chance that I could have given birth, or I could have found out the gender and at least had a mild amount of disappointment. I know myself well enough to know I would have absolutely loved and been grateful for any of those babies. But at this point, I know that no matter what a future pregnancy brings me, I will not be disappointed. And even if I have a special needs child, I will not be disappointed. I more so find it interesting that it happened right after that verbal decision that we made together. So where am I going from here? First, I am giving myself grace. I have been since the beginning, but I am making sure that the stories that I tell myself around this event are stories that serve me, because that is what we do as humans. We create the meaning, and the meaning that we give the events in our lives is what steers our next move. It's what makes things feel possible or impossible. For me, sharing is how I process life events. And so when I share this with you, first, it's because I've had so much healing and connection and other people sharing their stories. And on another level, it neutralizes the event when I'm able to share it to different people in different voices. What I have to be careful of is getting caught up in that story, telling it in the same way so that I create my own little pity party. One of the ways I make sure I don't get caught in the spiral of the story is by asking what questions instead of why questions. So not why is this happening to me? And do not get me wrong, that popped into my head 1,000 times. I am human and my brain is trying to keep me safe and do the things that brains do best. And also, my higher self is right there behind it saying, no, honey, let's ask what is in this for you. Let's ask where do we go next? I'm also aware of the emotion that I bring to the story. There's plenty of grief to be let out, and there's nothing wrong with my grief and my sadness, and it is deserved on so many levels. But I know the difference in feeling the grief so that it moves through me and adding to the story so that the grief builds bigger and bigger. And that doesn't mean bypassing my emotions or telling myself that everything's fine when I don't feel fine. That is toxic positivity. What it does mean is to be aware of the parts of it that I'm focusing on. Instead of telling myself that I'm unlucky or that the universe is conspiring against me, I look at all of the gifts that the universe sent me. My mother, who was willing to pick up my kids in the middle of the night. My husband and I, who acted as an amazing team and even helped each other with things that may not have seemed like the priority to one another. The beautiful women that held space for me in my retreat. Nicole, who sent me the most beautiful bouquet of roses at that retreat. My friend Sarah, who allowed me to stay at her house, and her beautiful family, who truly took care of me like I was in my own little wellness healing retreat before the retreat happened. And honestly, myself, for the strength that I showed, for my willingness and courage to feel. And with my life purpose, I'm thankful for it. I want to be able to meet people where they are. I want to know what struggle is so that I can help people through it. And no, I don't want to call in even more. I remember shaking my hands at God saying, okay, I get it. I feel like I've had enough this month. But I also could handle it all. I went deep into meditation the other day, and a spirit animal came to me, and I knew this animal had a message. So I spent some time reading about it and processing it. And so I want to share a little bit, because in this meditation, this beautiful snowy white wolf came into my awareness. And what struck me is that wolves have an instinct to protect its path. And so I felt as though this was a reflection of the warrior spirit that I really had to tap into this last month. What I also find fascinating is that they have this dual nature. They're a pack leader who takes care of others, but they also can symbolize the lone wolf who knows when to retreat for healing and renewal. Wolves actually undergo challenges to grow into leaders of their packs. They're not just automatically a leader. And they're also known for their ability to survive and thrive in even the harshest conditions. Something about seeing that in my meditation helped me to feel this warrior nature that I really have felt as though I had to tap into this last month. I feel like I'm coming out a different woman, and I am still grieving. I can burst into tears at any moment, and I don't have any reason to believe that that is a bad thing, given what our family has gone through. As I'm recording this, it's been exactly 7 days of being home from the retreat and back into, I'm doing air quotes as I say, normal life. The first few days I felt very on edge, and still I do a little bit. Anytime my husband would gasp or anyone would show any sign of something being wrong, I have been able to feel my body responding as though there's a crisis. So I've been spending a lot of time trying to tell my body and mind and heart that we are safe. And so I wanted to share this with you guys because I don't really know how to show up for interviews without putting it all on the table. And I didn't want to have something like this be ripped out in pieces without the full story. So if you've made it this far, thank you for hearing my story. I would absolutely love to know if you have or do struggle with any of the things that I've brought up, whether it's been miscarriage, crazy cluster headaches, evacuations from your tiny little mountain homes. I don't know, anything. I want to connect. That's the kind of support group that I want, are people that are willing to look at their lives as a gift, no matter how hard it is, and to see the meaning in it or create their own meaning in it, really. That is the support that I think we can all bring to each other. And so please do reach out to me on Instagram at MindLoveMelissa. That is where we can give and receive on the most personal level, I believe. So thank you for giving your mind a little love today. And I'll see you next week with a more interview style episode.
Thanks for tuning into Your Higher Frequency with Mind Love. Head to mindlove.com for a free gift to keep your vibes up until next week.
Big news! Wayfair's biggest sale of the season is here. It's Black Friday in July. Right now, score up to 80% off everything home at Wayfair. Get our lowest prices of the summer for 5 days only. Plus, amazing doorbuster deals and 24-hour surprise flash deals with fast and free shipping site-wide. So don't wait. Head to Wayfair.com today to score up to 80% off now through July 28th.
Wayfair, every style, every home.